Brilliance Audio presents Managing Conflict at Work, Understanding and Resolving Conflict for Productive Working Relationships by Jackie Keddy and Clive Johnson, performed by Cynthia Farrell. What is conflict management? We turn now to consider some basic principles for managing conflict. We start by defining what conflict management is, as well as what it isn't. Mention of the term conflict management, or CM as we prefer to abbreviate it throughout the text, may suggest that we're only concerned with disputes that have already taken hold, whether they've developed into full-blown arguments or are still at an early stage. Of course, we are concerned with how to deal with live disputes. However, we take a broader view of the subject, both as a management discipline and as a vital concern for any organization. Rather than just being about resolving the existing disputes, we suggest that a challenge for managers is to create the conditions that will minimize the risk of unhelpful conflict occurring in the first place. This requires an ability to recognize and quickly diffuse potential triggers for dispute when they first arise. Preventing conflict from arising in the first place may not always be possible. However, in many cases, painful and prolonged disputes can be avoided. To manage conflict effectively means being not only able to limit or remove altogether potential triggers for dispute, but also quickly recognizing when an individual or group of individuals show possible signs of a disagreement. The task of managing conflict is therefore closely integrated with managing people in a more general sense, for example, in the way they are motivated and the style of leadership being used. The scope of conflict management spans 3 stages: containment, resolution, and monitoring after the fact. Containment might involve strategies for dealing with disputes, self-containment, training, support, and development for teams and individuals, channeling constructive conflict, and investigating grievances and mounting appeals. The resolution portion of conflict management includes coaching, frontline management, informal mediation, litigation, and ADR. Once conflict has been resolved, potentially volatile situations require monitoring, which necessitate open communication, evaluation, and forecasting of the environment, collective learning, and skills for managing fallout. However, the scope of CM shouldn't stop here. Many conflicts between individuals and teams aren't only healthy, but may be valuable. For example, in deciding how to resolve a problem, tackle a project task, or simply when sounding out ideas. To be able to exploit this type of constructive conflict requires that it can first be identified and then channeled appropriately. Conversely, a failure to harness constructive disagreement may inadvertently generate an avoidable and unhelpful conflict of its own. Organizations have a role in helping to limit the prospect of unhealthy conflict. HR policy clearly has an important part to play, as do the attitude of leaders and the diverse mix of ingredients in the cultural recipe. Similarly, the way in which information is communicated to staff and the level of access they feel they have to make known their emerging concerns without fear of reprisal require a determined commitment from senior management. This means not just speaking about having strong corporate values, but living them. The term cultural recipe was coined by Jerry Johnson and Kevin Scholes in their book Exploring Corporate Strategy. They suggest that the recipe, or mix of influences that create organizational culture, incorporates a mix of both formal regulatory mechanisms, for example, role profiles, and informal ingredients, for example, attitudes. A simple definition of conflict management that we can use is therefore a learnt and ongoing discipline focused on preventing or minimizing unproductive or harmful disagreements from arising, and quickly and resource-efficiently bringing any which do to an enduring conclusion that the disagreeing parties can both accept.